I sit in my penthouse overlooking the city at night, watching the lights flicker like distant stars. 3 years of building something from nothing, and yet there is this hollow space inside my chest that success cannot seem to fill. 3 years since I last walked through my parents' front door. 3 years since my father screamed those words that still echo in quiet moments. But tonight I am thinking about something else, about how some things money cannot buy, but it can definitely buy justice, and sometimes justice looks like a property deed with your name on it. Before I tell you how I went from sleeping on a park bench to owning my parents' building, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story about family pride and the price of validation might just change how you see success. Now let me take you back to where it all fell apart. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where everyone knew everyone else's business. My father, Gerald, worked as an accountant at a local firm for 30 years. My mother, Patricia, spent her days as a nurse at the county hospital, coming home with tired eyes and stories about patients she could not talk about. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. We had Sunday dinners and family photos on the mantle. We looked like the kind of family that had everything figured out. But we had something else too. We had my older brother, Douglas. Douglas was everything my parents ever wanted in a son. He became a doctor, married a sweet woman named Jennifer, bought a house with a white picket fence 3 blocks from where we grew up. When my parents talked about their children, they talked about Douglas. His achievements lined the walls of their living room like trophies in a case. Medical degree here, wedding photo there, commendations from the hospital everywhere. And then there was me, Ralph, the other son, the disappointment. I was 22 when I realized college was not for me. I was sitting in my junior year statistics class, staring at formulas on the board, and I kept thinking about this idea I had. A software solution for small businesses struggling with supply chain management. I'd been coding since I was 14, teaching myself in my bedroom, while Douglas studied for his medical exams. I knew I could build something real, something that mattered, but that meant leaving school. The night I told my parents we were having dinner. Douglas and Jennifer were there too, because of course they were. They came to Sunday dinner every single week without fail. I waited until the pot roast was served, until everyone had settled into their usual rhythm of conversation about Douglas's latest case at the hospital. I need to tell you something, I said, setting down my fork. I am leaving school. The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My mother's hand froze halfway to her mouth. My father's face went from confused to red in about 3 seconds. You are what? Gerald's voice was low, dangerous. I am starting a company. I have this software idea, and I have been working on it for months. I have a prototype and potential clients, and I just need time to focus on it full time. You are throwing your life away. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. We sacrificed everything for your education. I am not throwing anything away. I am building something. Building what dreams fantasies. He looked at my mother. Patricia talked some sense into him. My mother just looked at me with these sad, tired eyes. Ralph, honey, maybe you should finish school first. Have something to fall back on. Douglas cleared his throat. Ralph, man, I get it. You want to be different. But the real world does not work like that. You need a degree, you need stability. I tried to explain. I pulled out my laptop right there at the table and showed them my work, my business plan, the emails from interested companies. But my father would not even look. He just kept shaking his head, kept saying I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I moved out the next week. I crashed at my friend's place, set up my workspace in his garage, and I decided something that night. I would not tell them about my progress. I would not give them updates or ask for advice. I would build this company in silence, and when it was big enough, when it was undeniable, then I would show them. Then they would have to see me. The first year was brutal. I worked 3 part-time jobs to keep myself afloat. I delivered pizzas in the evening, worked at a coffee shop in the early morning, and did freelance coding whenever I could grab an hour. At night, sometimes past midnight, I would work on my company. I called it Supply Stream. The name felt right, like water flowing exactly where it needed to go. I barely slept. I lived on instant ramen and gas station coffee. My studio apartment was so small I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms out. But every line of code I wrote felt like proof. Proof that I was not a failure. Proof that I had been right. The second year, things started to shift. I landed my first real client, a manufacturing company in Cleveland, struggling to track their inventory across multiple warehouses. They paid me $50,000 for a custom solution. Then another company heard about it. Then another. By the end of year 2, Supply Stream had brought in $500,000 in revenue. I hired my first employee, a brilliant CFO named Marcus, who believed in the vision as much as I did. But I still lived in that tiny studio. I still drove the same beat-up Honda I had bought for $800. Every penny went back into the company. I was building something bigger than myself. Year 3 was when everything exploded. We landed a contract with a national retail chain. Suddenly, we had 45 employees, an actual office with glass walls and ergonomic chairs, and revenue that hit $15 million. $15 million. I was 28 years old and running a multi-million-dollar company. But my parents did not know any of this. I had barely spoken to them in 3 years. A phone call on Christmas, a text on their birthdays. They thought I was still struggling, still chasing a dream that would never materialize. In their minds, I was the son who threw his life away for nothing. In October, my mother called me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in a board meeting when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but something made me step out into the hallway. "Ralph," her voice sounded strained, formal. "Your grandmother is coming to visit next weekend. Your father and I would like you to come to dinner." I could hear the reluctance in her tone. This was not an invitation. This was an obligation. "Sure, Mom. I will be there. Saturday at 6. Do not be late." She hung up before I could say anything else. I spent the rest of the week thinking about that dinner. Maybe this would be the time. Maybe I could finally tell them about Supply Stream, show them the quarterly reports, the Forbes article that called us one of the most promising startups in the Midwest. Maybe they would finally see me. Saturday came and I put on my best suit. Navy blue, tailored, the kind that cost more than my first month's rent in that studio apartment. I rented a Tesla for the drive, something sleek and quiet that would show I had made it without being obnoxious about it. I brought a folder with printed reports graphs showing our growth articles about the company. I was ready. I pulled up to my parents' building at 555, the same brick building I had visited a handful of times over the years, always feeling like a stranger in a place that should have been familiar. I took a deep breath and walked up to their second-floor apartment. Douglas opened the door. He looked the same, maybe a little older, still wearing that confident smile that came from always being right. "Ralph, you made it." He shook my hand, firm and professional. "Nice suit. Job interview." Something like that. Inside, the apartment smelled like my mother's cooking, roast chicken and rosemary. My grandmother was already seated on the couch chatting with Jennifer. My parents were in the kitchen, and I could hear their voices, low and tense. "Everyone, Ralph is here," Douglas announced like he was presenting a problem that needed solving. My grandmother smiled at me, warm and genuine. "Ralph, come give your grandmother a hug." I hugged her, and for a moment I felt like maybe this would be okay. But then my grandfather spoke. "Still looking for work, son?" The question hit like a slap. I straightened up, tried to keep my voice steady. "Actually, I run a company, Supply Stream. We do supply chain management software." "Oh, that is nice," my grandmother said, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. She had no idea what that meant. My father came out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a towel. "Ralph, you are here." "Hi, Dad." We sat down for dinner, and it was like stepping back into every nightmare I had ever had about family gatherings. Douglas talked about a complex surgery he performed. Jennifer talked about their new house, the one with the bigger yard and the renovated kitchen. My mother served food and smiled, but her smiles never reached her eyes when she looked at me. "So, Ralph," my grandfather said, cutting into his chicken, "when are you going to get a real job?" I set down my fork carefully. "I have a real job. I told you I run a company." Douglas laughed, not mean, but dismissive. "Ralph, come on. We have all had side projects, but you need stability." "It is not a side project. We have 45 employees, 15 million in annual revenue." The table went quiet. Then my father spoke, his voice cold and flat. "Stop with the fantasy. When will you get a real job? I am telling you the truth. I can show you the reports, the tax filings, everything. 15 million. My father's face was turning red. "You expect us to believe that? Stop lying to us, Ralph." My grandfather shook his head. "Gerald, maybe you should have been stricter with this one." I felt like I was 10 years old again, being scolded for tracking mud through the house. I pulled out my phone, opened up our company's financial dashboard. "Look, this is real. This is my company." My father glanced at the screen for half a second. "These can be faked. I am an accountant, Ralph. I know how easy it is to make numbers look good on a screen. Why can you not just believe in me for once? Because you have done nothing but disappoint us." His voice was loud now, filling the small dining room. "You are 28 years old, living like a college dropout, making up stories about success." My mother put her hand on his arm. "Gerald, maybe we should know. He needs to hear this. Look at your brother. Look at Douglas. That is what success looks like. Not some fantasy about a software company nobody has ever heard of." Douglas had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Dad, maybe Ralph is telling the truth." But my father was not listening anymore. He was on a roll, years of disappointment pouring out in one angry stream. I tried one more time. "I can take you to the office tomorrow. You can meet my team, see the operation." "I do not have time for your games, Ralph." I looked around the table. My mother would not meet my eyes. My grandmother looked sad. My grandfather looked disgusted. Jennifer was staring at her plate. And Douglas, perfect Douglas, just gave me this pitying look that said he felt sorry for me. I should have left then. But it was raining hard outside, and something stupid and hopeful in me thought maybe if I stayed, maybe if I tried harder, I could make them understand. "It is really coming down out there," my mother said quietly. "Ralph, maybe you should stay in your old room tonight." "My old room?" "Well, it is more of a storage room now. But the couch pulls out." Of course it did. My childhood bedroom, the place where I taught myself to code, where I dreamed about building something meaningful, had been turned into storage. Meanwhile, Douglas's room remained a shrine to his achievements, untouched and perfect. But I agreed because I was tired and the rain was pounding against the windows, and maybe in the morning things would be clearer. I did not sleep. I lay on that pull-out couch surrounded by boxes of old tax documents and Christmas decorations, and I listened to my parents argue in the next room. The walls were thinner than I remembered. "Maybe we were too harsh, Gerald?" My mother's voice was soft pleading. "Harsh. The boy is living in fantasy land. He shows up here in a rented suit, driving a borrowed car, probably making up stories about millions of dollars. It is pathetic, Patricia. What if he is telling the truth? He is not. And even if he is, what kind of son disappears for 3 years and then shows up expecting us to believe he is suddenly successful? No. He made his choice when he dropped out. He made his choice when he stopped being part of this family." I heard my mother cry softly, then silence. At 6 in the morning, I heard footsteps downstairs. Voices. I got up, folded the couch back, and went down to find my father and Douglas in the kitchen, both looking at a phone. What is going on? Douglas looked up, and there was something in his face I had never seen before, something sharp. I did some research last night, Googled your company name. He turned the phone screen toward me. Found a Forbes article mentioning Supply Stream, mentions a Ralph something as the founder. My heart jumped. Finally they would see. But Douglas kept talking. Dad, I think Ralph's name is on some scam company. This has to be fraud. Forbes must have gotten bad information. What? No, that is my company. That is me in the article. My father snatched the phone, read for a few seconds, then looked at me with pure disgust. You are using our name for your schemes. There is no scheme. That is my actual company. I built it. Forbes is wrong, Douglas said firmly. They have to be. This is some kind of fraud operation using Ralph's name. Are you serious right now? I looked between them and I finally understood. They were never going to believe me. It did not matter what proof I showed them. In their minds, I was the failure, and that story was easier than admitting they had been wrong. My father's face was red again, redder than last night. His hands were shaking. I want you out, now. Dad, please just let me explain. Out you are, no son of mine. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Gerald, wait. Patricia, stay out of this. He is a liar and a fraud, and I will not have him in this house. I tried to go back upstairs to get my things, but my father blocked the stairs. You can leave with what you have on. I am not letting you steal anything else from us. I am not stealing anything. I just want my wallet. You should have thought of that before you decided to run scams using our family name. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it was not destroying me from the inside out. I grabbed my wallet from the coffee table where I had left it, snatched my car keys. My father walked to the door, opened it. The rain was still coming down harder now, turning the street into a river. Go sleep in the gutter. His voice boomed through the small apartment, probably waking the neighbors. That is where failures belong. I looked at my mother. She was crying, but she did not move, did not speak, did not defend me. Douglas stood behind my father's arms, crossed righteous in his certainty that he was helping save the family from my lies. The door slammed behind me. I stood in the rain for a minute, maybe longer. Water soaked through my expensive suit, ran down my face, mixed with tears I did not want to acknowledge. Then I walked to my rental car, got in, and sat there in the driver's seat while the windows fogged up and the world outside became a blur. I was not crying because they kicked me out. I was crying because I finally understood they would never believe in me. No amount of success, no amount of proof, no amount of achievement would ever change the story they had written about me in their minds. I was the son who failed, and that narrative was set in stone. At 7 in the morning, sitting in that car, I called Marcus. Ralph, you okay, man? It is 7 on a Sunday. I need to buy a building. What? The building on Maple Street, the one in my hometown. My parents' building, can we do it? There was a pause. With our current cash flow and assets, yeah, we could definitely do it. But Ralph, what is going on? I need to know if we can close fast. 3 weeks. Can we make that happen? If the owner is motivated and we pay cash, absolutely. But Ralph, why your parents' building? This is not revenge, Marcus. This is closure. The first week was due diligence. Marcus worked with our lawyers to research the property. It was an 8-unit building, brick construction from the 1960s, solid, but aging. The owner was a retired couple named the Hendersons, who had owned it for 40 years. They were ready to move to Florida, ready to be done with tenants and maintenance and winter snow. The asking price was $1.2 million. We could pay cash. Marcus called me Tuesday of that first week. The Hendersons are thrilled. Nobody else is offering cash, and everyone else wants a 90-day close. You are offering 3 weeks all cash. They will take it. Good. One condition: we keep the buyer identity confidential until closing. Use the LLC. Do not mention my name. You sure about this? I am sure. Week 2 was paperwork, contracts, inspections, title searches. Our lawyers moved fast and the Hendersons cooperated with everything. They had no reason not to. This was the easiest sale they could have asked for. I learned everything about that building during those 2 weeks. Built in 1964, 8 apartments, 2 per floor. My parents had lived there for 15 years, renting a 2-bedroom on the second floor for $1,200 a month. Below market rate because they were good tenants, the Hendersons said. They always paid on time, never complained. Week 3, we closed. I stood in a lawyer's office in downtown Cincinnati and signed my name maybe 50 times. The Hendersons signed their names. Money moved from accounts I controlled to accounts they controlled. And just like that, I owned the building where my parents lived. I did not plan to raise anyone's rent. That was important to me. I hired a property manager, a competent woman named Angela, who had managed residential properties for 20 years. I told her I wanted to be a good landlord, fair and responsive. I told her to schedule a meeting with all the tenants to introduce the new ownership. Do you want to be there? Angela asked. I will be there. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks and 2 days after my father kicked me out. Angela sent notices to all 8 units. The new owner wanted to introduce himself, assure everyone that nothing would change, answer any questions. I wore a different suit this time, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. I looked like what I was, a successful businessman, someone who had built something real. I arrived early and waited in the small community room on the first floor. One by one, tenants filtered in. Elderly couple from the 3rd floor, young family from the 1st, college students from the 4th, and then my parents walked in. My mother saw me first. Her hand went to her mouth. Her eyes went wide. My father was looking at some paper Angela had handed him, reading the notice about new ownership. Then he looked up. The room was not silent because other tenants were chatting, asking Angela questions. But in the space between my parents and me, there was absolute silence. Angela cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. I would like to introduce you to your new landlord, the owner of this building. This is Ralph Morrison, CEO of Supply Stream. I stepped forward. Hi, Mom, Dad. I bought the building. After the meeting, after the other tenants had left with reassurances that their rent would stay the same and that repairs would be handled promptly, my parents stood frozen in that community room. Angela had given us privacy, sensing the tension. This is some kind of trick, my father said finally. His voice was different now, smaller. I pulled out a folder from my briefcase. Here is the deed. Here are the incorporation papers for the LLC that owns the building. Here is the closing statement from 3 days ago. Here are the last 4 quarterly reports from Supply Stream, audited by a national accounting firm. And here is the Forbes article, the actual print edition where they interviewed me. I laid each document on the table between us. My mother reached for the Forbes magazine with shaking hands. Ralph, she whispered. Oh, Ralph, I am so sorry. My father stared at the papers like they were written in a language he could not read. Why did you not tell us I tried? You would not listen. This does not change anything, he said, but his voice cracked on the words. I know. That is why I am doing this. I pulled out an envelope, placed it on top of the other papers. This is a new lease agreement. Same rent you are paying now, but I am locking it in for 10 years. You will not see an increase as long as I own this building. Why? My mother was crying openly now. Because you are still my parents. I am not going to punish you by raising your rent or forcing you to move. But I need you to know something. I made it. I made it without your belief, without your support, without your approval. I did not need you to believe in me for it to be real. My father finally looked at me, really looked at me. I was wrong, he said quietly. Yes, you were? I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything. I am not here for an apology. I am here because I needed to prove something to myself, not to you. I needed to know I could stand in front of you as your landlord, as someone successful, and feel nothing but peace. Do you, my mother asked, feel peace? I thought about it. Did I, standing there in that community room, watching my parents process the reality of who I had become, did I feel the closure I had been seeking? I am getting there, I said honestly. We did not hug. We did not have some tearful reconciliation. But something shifted in that room. Some old story ended, and a new one began. One where I did not need their validation to know my worth. 2 months later, my father called me, asked if I wanted to come to dinner. Not a command, not an obligation, an invitation. I went. It was awkward and stilted, but my father did something he had never done before. He apologized. I was wrong, Ralph. I was scared. Scared you would fail like I almost did. What do you mean? He told me a story I had never heard. How when he was young he had wanted to start his own accounting firm. How his parents had told him it was too risky, that he should get a stable job, play it safe. How he had listened to them and spent his whole life working for someone else, wondering what might have been. I projected my fear onto you, he said. I did not want you to take risks because I was afraid you would fail. But really I was afraid you would succeed and prove that I had been too scared to try. My mother reached across the table, took my hand. We are proud of you. We always should have been. I did not forgive them immediately. Forgiveness is not a switch you flip. It is a process, slow and complicated. But I left the door open. We started having monthly dinners. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding something that looked like trust. A year after buying the building, I stood outside on the sidewalk looking up at those brick walls. I thought about the night I had been kicked out, about the rain and my father's words. I thought about the scared, hurt version of myself, sitting in that rental car, calling Marcus, deciding to buy this place. I had thought buying the building would prove something, would validate me, would force my parents to see me. But standing there a year later, I realized it had not proven anything to them. It had proven something to me. I did not need their approval to be successful. I did not need their belief to make my dreams real. I did not need them to acknowledge me, for me to know my worth. The building was not about them at all. It was about me finally understanding that their opinion of me was just that, an opinion, not a fact, not a truth, not a limitation. Justice was not making them see I was right. Justice was living well and honestly building something meaningful and not letting their doubt define me. Our family now is not perfect. We still have hard conversations. Douglas eventually called me too, apologized for siding with Dad that morning, admitted he had been jealous that I had the courage to chase something he never could. We are not best friends, but we are brothers again, imperfect human trying. Sometimes the biggest success is not proving them wrong. It is proving to yourself that you never needed their approval to begin with. And sometimes buying the building is not about ownership. It is about finally being free. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between what others expected and what you knew was right for you? Have you ever had to prove yourself not to them, but to yourself? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe because I have more stories about finding your way when the path is not clear. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by who believes in you. It is determined by what you believe about yourself. Stay strong out there.